What if the dream life was actually a nightmare in disguise for one woman married to a Beverly Hills tech mogul? Her fairy tale pregnancy was about to unravel into public humiliation right in the middle of a luxury baby boutique, surrounded by everything a new mother could want. Her husband leaned over to the store clerk and uttered 7 words that would shatter her world and ignite a battle for her own child. "Don't worry about her opinion. She's just a surrogate." But he made one fatal mistake. She wasn't a surrogate. She was his wife, and he had just handed her the weapon she needed to bring his empire crashing down. The air in the Beverly Hills penthouse was always the same, cold, still, and faintly scented with white lilacs and lemon slick cleaning products. It was the smell of wealth. Marissa Langley had decided it was the scent of a life so curated that even the oxygen felt filtered and artificial. From their 42nd floor living room, the Los Angeles skyline was a picture-perfect sprawl of steel and green, a world away from the chaotic sunburnt sidewalks of Santa Monica she used to walk. Now her world was this glass fortress in the sky, and its king was Alexander Vaughn. At 8 months pregnant, Marissa felt less like a glowing mother-to-be and more like a sacred vessel, a human incubator for the Vaughn dynasty's next legacy. Every morning, a nutritionist-prepped meal appeared. Every afternoon, a prenatal yoga instructor guided her through poses that felt more performative than peaceful. Every evening, she would dress for dinner with her husband, a man who looked at her belly with the same possessive gleam he reserved for a freshly acquired tech patent. Alexander Vaughn was a man shaped by generations of wealth and sharpened by his own insatiable ambition. He moved with eerie calm, his dark hair perfectly styled, his tailored suits never bearing a wrinkle. He didn't speak, he delivered declarations. He didn't ask, he dictated. Their marriage, a whirlwind that had stunned California's elite, had felt like a fantasy during those early weeks. The dashing billionaire sweeping the soft-spoken interior designer off her feet. But the dream had swiftly revealed its fine print and limitations. Today was supposed to break the mold. Today was supposed to be real. They were going shopping for the baby. Not online, not via a personal shopper, but together at Bébé Élégant, the chic French children's boutique on Rodeo Drive. It was Marissa's only request, a last-ditch grasp at genuine shared excitement. After some initial resistance about how inefficient it all seemed, Alexander had, to Marissa's surprise, agreed. "Is this really necessary, Marissa?" he asked, eyes glued to the stock market ticker running across the television screen as she stood patiently by the door. She wore a simple yet elegant cream-colored cashmere dress, one he'd bought for her himself. It hugged her rounded belly, a constant and unignorable reminder of the precious life growing inside her. "I think it is," she replied softly, her hand resting gently on the curve of her stomach. "I want to pick things out, to feel them." He sighed, a sound of executive-level impatience, and clicked off the TV with a remote. "A $500 onesie feels the same as a $50 one, I assure you. But fine, let's get this over with." The drive down Rodeo Drive in the back of the silent, imposing Bentley was suffocating. Alexander was glued to his phone, his thumb flicking dismissively through a stream of emails. Marissa gazed out the tinted window, watching the city blur by, a rush of people living loud, messy, authentic lives. She felt a pang of longing so sharp, it nearly stole her breath. She was lonelier now, surrounded by unimaginable luxury, than she had ever been in her cramped studio apartment near Venice Beach. Bébé Élégant was a quiet oasis of taste and calm. Tiny, exquisitely crafted clothes hung on miniature racks. The air smelled of crisp linen and just a hint of baby powder. For a fleeting moment, Marissa felt a wave of pure, unfiltered joy. This was for her baby, her son. The young, bright-eyed associate named Brooke approached them. "Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Vaughn. It's an honor to have you. Can I help you find anything in particular?" Alexander gave a curt nod, already visibly bored. "My wife needs to select some essentials." The way he said "wife" sounded more like a job title than an endearment. Marissa's smile was genuine as she turned to Brooke. "Hello, I was hoping to look at some coming-home outfits, maybe some soft blankets." Her fingers drifted over a rack of impossibly soft sleepers, delicately tracing the embroidery with quiet awe. She picked up a tiny, pale blue cashmere jumpsuit. It was perfect. She could already imagine her son's tiny limbs nestled in its folds, feel the warmth of his new life. "Oh, this one is beautiful," she murmured, holding it up. Alexander, who had been tapping his foot impatiently by the entrance, strode over. He glanced at the garment in her hands with complete indifference. "It's fine," he said flatly. "Get 5 of them, and the matching hats." "But I want to look," Marissa insisted, a subtle pleading in her voice. "This is supposed to be a special moment." She turned to Brooke, another woman, hoping for an ally. "Don't you think this one is just perfect?" Brooke, sensing the tension, offered a carefully measured, professional smile. "It's one of our most popular pieces, ma'am. The quality is exceptional, a wonderful choice for bringing your little one home." Alexander let out another of his long-suffering sighs. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial tone, just loud enough for both women to hear. He gestured toward Marissa with a dismissive flick of his hand, a smirk curling on his lips as he addressed the clerk. "Let's speed this up. Just give me one of everything you recommend for a newborn boy. The best of everything. Don't worry about her opinion," he added, pausing and leaning in like he was sharing a dirty little secret. "She's just the surrogate." The words hit Marissa like a physical blow. The air left her lungs in a rush. Suddenly, the charming boutique felt like a shrinking, airless box. Brooke's smile froze. Her eyes widened in stunned confusion, maybe even pity. She looked from Alexander's smug expression to Marissa's now ashen face. Just the surrogate. The phrase echoed like a siren in the pristine silence of the store. It was a brand, a dismissal, a declaration that erased her identity, not just as a wife, but as a woman. Most crushing of all, as a mother. In a single sentence, he had reduced her to nothing more than a rented womb, a biological service hired for convenience. Every bit of love, fear, hope, every kick and flutter she had felt from the life growing inside her, erased in one cold, careless statement. Her hand, still clutching the tiny blue jumpsuit, began to tremble. Her vision blurred. She could feel Brooke's pity spotlighting her like a flame. Alexander, oblivious, or worse, utterly indifferent to the destruction he had just unleashed, pulled out a sleek black Amex card. "Bill it to the corporate account, Vaughn Industries. Have it all delivered this afternoon." He turned to leave, then glanced over his shoulder at Marissa, who still stood frozen in place. "Are you coming?" he asked, his tone edged with annoyance, as if she were the one causing a scene. She couldn't speak. She could only stare. Her mind swirled in a maelstrom of shock and a terrifying new clarity. This wasn't a moment of arrogance. It wasn't a careless slip. This was what he truly believed. In his world of contracts, deals, and power plays, she and their child were the ultimate acquisition. And he had just clarified her role in the transaction for the world to hear. The fairy tale wasn't over. It had never begun. It had always been a business deal, and in that moment, as she numbly followed him out of the boutique, leaving behind the perfect blue jumpsuit, something began to harden inside her. The shock gave way to cold, cutting resolve. He thought he was defining her. But in truth, he had just set her free. The ride back to the penthouse was a study in Arctic silence. The plush leather seats of the Bentley felt more like a coffin. Marissa stared out the window, her reflection a ghostly pale mask. She didn't look at Alexander. She couldn't. If she did, the fragile dam holding back a tsunami of rage and grief would shatter. Alexander, for his part, seemed entirely unconcerned. He had resumed scrolling through his phone, as if the last 10 minutes hadn't happened at all. As if the entire incident had been nothing more than a mild inconvenience, swiftly managed and promptly forgotten. When the elevator doors opened directly into their apartment, Marissa walked straight toward the bedroom suite, her movements stiff and robotic. "I'm having dinner with the board tonight," Alexander called after her. "Don't wait up." She stopped in the doorway, her back still to him. Her voice, when it came, was dangerously calm. "What you did back there, Alexander, what you said." He finally looked up from his phone, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Oh, for God's sake, Marissa, are we really going to do this?" he sighed. "It was just a figure of speech, a way to move things along. The girl was fawning all over you. It was nauseating." A figure of speech? She turned to face him. If he'd been paying attention, he might have noticed the fire behind her eyes. But he wasn't. "You humiliated me. You erased me. You told a complete stranger that I'm not the mother of my own child." He scoffed and set his phone down with an air of finality. "Don't be so dramatic. You're being overly emotional. It's the hormones," he said dismissively as he walked to the bar and poured himself a whiskey. "You're carrying the next Vaughn. That is your purpose. That's the arrangement we agreed to. Whether the clerk at a baby store understands the nuances of our situation is irrelevant. Arrangement." The word hung in the air between them, cold and heavy. It was the word that had defined their entire relationship. She remembered the day his lawyers had first presented her with the marital and progeny agreement. At the time, she had been so blinded by his charm, so overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of his wealth and attention, that she had barely registered the chillingly transactional language. It had started 2 years ago. Marissa had been working at a small, struggling design studio in Silver Lake when Alexander had walked in to commission a sculpture for his estate and immediately redirected his focus to her. He was dazzling, sharp, and pursued her with relentless precision that left her breathless. He took her to restaurants where the chefs came out personally to greet him, flew her to Rome on a whim for the weekend, and showered her with gifts that cost more than her yearly income. She, a quiet girl raised in a loving but modest household in Pasadena, had been utterly swept away when he proposed after only 6 weeks. She'd thought it was the most romantic thing that had ever happened to her. The ring alone, a flawless 8-carat diamond, had made headlines in the West Coast society pages. It was only after she said yes that the arrangement was introduced. His attorney, a severe man named Mr. Kessler, had sat her down in a sterile conference room. "Alexander is very fond of you, Marissa," he had said, pushing a thick, leather-bound document across the table. "But you must understand, a man in his position requires certain assurances. The continuation of the Vaughn family line," he explained, "was of paramount importance. This agreement simply formalizes the terms of your union and your role in securing the Vaughn legacy." She had naively assumed it was just a prenuptial agreement. But it was so much more. It detailed her responsibilities as a wife, to present a serene and supportive public image, to host formal events, and to refrain from any professional endeavors that might interfere with her primary obligations. But the most chilling parts lay beneath the heading, progeny. The contract explicitly required her to produce a male heir within the first 3 years of marriage. Upon the birth of such an heir, a trust of $10 million would be created in her name. If she failed, or if the child was female, the terms would be subject to renegotiation. The pages were dense with clauses about genetics, prenatal care, and postnatal obligations, all laid out in the cold and personal language of a corporate acquisition. Most disturbingly, it granted Alexander sole legal and physical custody of any and all children resulting from the marriage, in the event of a divorce. She'd felt a knot of ice form in her gut. But still, she had signed it. She was in love, she had told herself. This was just how people like Alexander operated. It was business. It wasn't personal. She convinced herself his love would soften the harsh ink of the document. But now, standing in the silence of their penthouse, she saw the truth. The contract wasn't just a formality, it was his scripture. He didn't see her as a wife. He saw her as a beautiful, high-risk investment, one that was just about to mature. "The arrangement," she repeated aloud, her voice edged with a bitterness that surprised even her. "I see. So in our arrangement, what am I, Alexander?" Marissa asked, her voice cool but trembling beneath the surface. "Am I your wife? Or am I a service provider about to deliver a product?" He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, his expression unreadable. "You're Mrs. Alexander Vaughn, a title many women would kill for. You live a life of unimaginable privilege. All I ask in return is your discretion and your cooperation. Today, you are being uncooperative. I rectified the situation. End of story." The finality in his tone was like a door slamming shut in her face. There was no apology, no regret, no hint of empathy. This was her life now, a gilded cage where her only value lay in her womb. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay awake in their vast echoing bedroom, listening to the distant hum of Los Angeles far below. The baby kicked, a strong, steady thump against her ribs. A silent message passed between mother and child. "I'm here, Mom. I'm real." She placed her hand on her stomach. "I know," she thought, And I will not let him do this to you. I will not let you be raised as an asset. You are a person, my son. And just like that, a decision, cold, clear, absolute, settled over her. The shock was gone. The grief had hardened into fury, and the fury was forging itself into a plan. He had called her a surrogate. He believed she had no voice, no rights. He believed his contract was ironclad. But contracts could be challenged. Quietly, Marissa slipped out of bed and padded into her private study, the one space in the penthouse Alexander had allowed her to decorate herself. A tiny island of her former life. She powered on her laptop. Her fingers moved with purpose across the keys. Her search terms were sharp and urgent. Top divorce attorneys LA. Maternal rights, challenging coercive marital agreements. Page after page of slick corporate firms populated the screen. She dismissed them all. Alexander could buy and sell those firms before breakfast. She needed someone different, someone who fought for women like her, someone who understood the brutal precision of men like her husband. And then she found it. A profile in Los Angeles Weekly, the Lioness of Family Court. It was a feature on a lawyer named Evelyn Tran. Known for her ruthless courtroom strategy and her unwavering representation of women battling some of California's most powerful and calculating men. The article quoted one of her former opponents. Going up against Evelyn Tran is like wrestling a lioness. You don't win, you survive. The article included a photo. Evelyn Tran looked razor sharp, with intelligent eyes that seemed to pierce through the camera. She wasn't smiling. Marissa stared at the image for a long time. This wasn't a woman who dealt in metaphors. She dealt in facts. And Marissa had a very powerful fact on her side. A fact Alexander had so carelessly handed her in a baby boutique on Rodeo Drive. With trembling fingers, she picked up her phone. She found the number for the Tran Law Group and dialed, her heart pounding an erratic rhythm against her ribs. It was well past 10 p.m., but she left a message on the after-hours voicemail, her voice low and controlled. My name is Marissa Vaughn, she said. My husband is Alexander Vaughn. He just told a store clerk that I'm the surrogate for my own baby. I need your help. I believe my life and my child's life may be in danger. She ended the call. A terrifying, exhilarating surge of adrenaline rushed through her. The war had begun. Alexander Vaughn had money, power, and a team of ruthless attorneys. But Marissa Langley Vaughn had the truth. And soon, she hoped, she would have a lioness on her side. The office of Evelyn Tran was nothing like the cold, glass conference rooms at Vaughn Industries. Tucked inside a historic building in downtown Los Angeles, it was filled with books, legal binders, and modern art, bold, abstract pieces that pulsed with energy. The space felt like the strategic center of a brilliant, relentless mind. Marissa sat on a worn leather sofa, a cup of untouched tea resting on the coffee table in front of her. 2 days had passed since the incident at Bébé Elegant. 2 long days of pretending to be the poised, emotional wife while inside she was coiled with nerves and fierce resolve. Evelyn Tran entered the room. She was even more imposing in person. A woman in her late 40s, with salt and pepper hair cut into a sharp, sophisticated bob, and eyes so focused they seemed to scan for truth and lies simultaneously. She didn't offer small talk or sympathetic smiles. Instead, she extended a firm handshake and got directly to the point. Mrs. Vaughn, she said, her voice crisp. My assistant filled me in on the basics. Your message was compelling. Tell me everything. Start with the contract. For the next hour, you are a soldier in a covert operation. Your home is enemy territory. You need to become the perfect spy. The strategy session that followed was intense. Alexandra's plan was meticulous. First, evidence. She instructed. You need to document everything. Keep a secret journal. Every dismissive comment, every act of control, every time he refers to the baby as his heir or his legacy instead of as your son. Note the dates, the times, the context. Second, communication. He will become suspicious if you are suddenly silent. You must continue to play your part. Be the wife he expects you to be. But when you speak with him, use a recording app on your phone. Keep it in your pocket. We need his voice, his own words, to hang him with. Third, assets. He will try to hide money. My forensic accounting team will start digging into Vaughn Holdings. But anything you can find, credit card statements left out, private banking documents, anything, photograph it and send it to me through a secure messaging app I will set up for you. And finally, and this is the most important part, Alexandra said, her voice dropping. Do not, under any circumstances, let him know that you have seen a lawyer. Your greatest weapon right now is his arrogance. He doesn't believe you are capable of fighting back. We will use that belief against him. We will build our case in the shadows until we are ready to strike. Marissa left the office feeling like a different person. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now overlaid with purpose. She was no longer just a victim. She was an agent in her own liberation. In the backseat of the rideshare back to the penthouse, she clutched her bag tightly, as if it contained more than just a phone and notepad, but a blueprint to freedom. The buildings of Manhattan blurred past her window like ghosts of the life she had almost resigned herself to. Every traffic light, every stop sign, every passing pedestrian felt like a signal from the universe. Keep going. Don't stop. You're almost out. The following weeks were the most harrowing of her life. She was an actress giving the performance of a lifetime. She smiled at Carter's cold jokes. She complimented his business acumen. Each laugh felt like a betrayal to herself. Each compliment, a paper cut to her soul. At night, she would retreat to the farthest corner of their vast bed, cradle her belly, and whisper promises to her baby. I'm doing this for you. The walls of the penthouse, once sterile and silent, now echoed with her silent resolve. She discussed the nursery decorations with a placid sweetness that made her sick to her stomach. And all the while, she was gathering her arsenal. Her phone became her sword. She recorded a conversation where Carter casually discussed the terms of her bonus once the baby was delivered successfully, as if he were closing a deal. She recorded him telling his mother, Genevieve, over speakerphone, "Don't worry, mother. The girl knows her place. She won't be a problem." "You are a soldier in a covert operation," Evelyn had told her. "Your home is enemy territory. You need to become the perfect spy." The strategy session that followed was intense. Evelyn's plan was meticulous, surgical. "First, evidence," she said firmly. "You need to document everything. Keep a private journal. Every offhand remark, every moment of control. Every time he refers to the baby as his heir, his legacy, not as your son. Record the dates, the times, the context. Second, communication. He'll grow suspicious if you suddenly go quiet. You must continue to play the role. Be the wife he expects, attentive, docile. But when you speak to him, use the recorder app on your phone. Keep it running in your pocket. We need his voice, his own words, to bring him down. Third, assets. He'll try to bury money, move it, hide it. My forensic accounting team will start combing through Vaughn Industries, but anything you can spot, credit card receipts, private banking statements, open laptops, snap a photo. I'll give you access to a secure messaging app to send it safely. And lastly, and this is critical, Evelyn's voice dropped, her eyes narrowing. Under no circumstances should he know you've consulted a lawyer. Your greatest weapon right now is his arrogance. He doesn't believe you're capable of fighting back. We're going to use that belief against him. We'll build our case in the shadows until it's time to strike. Marissa left Evelyn's office a different woman. The fear was still there, cold and coiled in her stomach, but now it was laced with direction, with resolve. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was planning her liberation. The weeks that followed were the most grueling of her life. She played the part of the polished, compliant wife to perfection. She smiled at Alexander's sharp remarks. She complimented his boardroom victories. She discussed nursery themes with serene sweetness that made her want to scream. All the while, she was building her arsenal. Her phone became her weapon. She recorded him discussing the details of her bonus once the baby was delivered successfully. His words clinical, like he was finalizing a business acquisition. She captured a speakerphone conversation with his mother, Genevieve. "Don't worry, mother," Alexander said breezily. "The girl knows her place. She won't be a problem." Genevieve Vaughn was an even colder, more terrifying version of her son, a razor-thin woman draped in Chanel and diamonds. She treated Marissa with barely disguised disdain. She visited frequently, ostensibly to check in on Marissa's health, but in truth to inspect the investment. During one of these visits, Marissa left her phone recording on the kitchen counter while she feigned a dizzy spell and went to get some water. Genevieve, believing herself alone, made a call. "He's an absolute fool, of course," Genevieve's clipped voice said into her own phone. Telling a store clerk she's the surrogate, so uncouth. But the principle is sound. She serves her purpose, gets her payout, and the child is raised a Vaughn, free of any sentimental maternal interference. The contract Kessler drafted is a work of art. Marissa stood in the pantry, hand over her mouth, silent tears running down her face, but she didn't make a sound. She saved the recording. It was gold, proof of conspiracy, proof of intent. She photographed statements from a Cayman Islands account she found in Alexander's desk drawer. She journaled every night, her hand cramping as she catalogued each daily cruelty, every cold dismissal, the suffocating isolation of her luxurious prison. Her belly grew with each passing week. The baby's kicks grew stronger, more urgent, reminders of why she was enduring it all. This wasn't about revenge or money. It was about freedom. It was about saving her son from a life as an object, a pawn in a billionaire's dynastic legacy. One evening, as she was preparing for a charity gala, Alexander walked into her dressing room, adjusting the diamond-studded panther cufflinks on his shirt. "The board is very pleased with Q3 projections," he said, eyeing her reflection in the mirror. "And the announcement of the heir has definitely strengthened my position. You've been a valuable asset, Marissa. I'll be sure to factor that in when it's time to settle your account." The old Marissa would have winced. The new Marissa, the soldier, simply smiled back at him in the mirror. "I'm so glad I could be of service, darling," she said, her tone smooth as glass. In the pocket of her gown, her phone was recording every word. The blade was being sharpened. The time to strike was almost here. The baby shower was Genevieve Vaughn's crowning masterpiece of passive aggression, held in the grand ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel. It was less a celebration of life and more a corporate PR campaign for the Vaughn brand. The color scheme, a sterile combination of Vaughn blue and silver. The cake was a towering, multi-tiered monstrosity, crowned with a sugar-sculpted lion, the Vaughn family crest. The guest list read like a directory of California's financial elite. Not a single person from Marissa's own life was present. No one from Pasadena. No childhood friends, no distant cousins. Genevieve had conveniently misplaced the address list Marissa had given her weeks ago. Marissa sat at the front of the room on an oversized throne-like chair. A rigid smile stretched across her face like a mask. She felt like an exhibit at a luxury zoo. Women she didn't know came up, touched her belly without asking, and offered clipped, impersonal congratulations before drifting away to network with someone more important. "You must be absolutely exhausted," cooed a woman whose face was pulled so tight she looked permanently startled. "But it will all be worth it for Alexander." "A boy, we hear," chimed in another, clutching a flute of champagne. "Genevieve must be ecstatic. She's been waiting for this." Every word felt like a paper cut. No one saw her, not really. They saw a role, a utility. Alexander, meanwhile, was in his element, gliding from conversation to conversation, accepting praise like a king returned from conquest. He never once came to Marissa's side, never met her gaze. He was the star of the celebration. She was just part of the scenery. Then came the speeches. Genevieve took the microphone first. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate this extraordinary occasion," she began, her voice echoing slightly across the vaulted ballroom. "My son Alexander has accomplished so much in his life. He has built an empire. But legacy," she said, her voice deepening, "is not built on glass and steel alone. It is built on blood. Today we celebrate the continuation of that bloodline. We celebrate the future of the Vaughn name." She raised her glass. "To the Vaughn heir." "To the Vaughn heir," the crowd echoed back. Genevieve continued, 10 full minutes of waxing poetic about the Vaughn family history, about Alexander's grandfather, about heritage, about duty, about empire. She did not mention Marissa's name. Not once. It was no oversight. It was deliberate. A clinical erasure. Marissa felt the icy dread creep back under her skin, but she forced her face to stay neutral. She clapped when required. She smiled when the camera swung her way. Inside her jeweled clutch, her phone was recording it all. Then Alexander took the stage. He looked impossibly polished, like a monarch surveying his court. "Thank you, Mother," Alexander said, turning to the crowd, "and thank you all. This is, as my mother noted, a momentous day. A man doesn't build a company for himself. He builds it for those who come after. For years I have focused on building Vaughn Holdings. Now it's time to secure its future." He paused, Let the weight of his words settle over the room like smoke. I've always believed in making the best investments, in acquiring the best assets. This next phase of my life is no different. I've taken every necessary step to ensure that the next generation of Vaughn leadership will be strong, healthy, and unencumbered by unnecessary complications. The arrangements have been made, he said, and everything is proceeding perfectly according to plan. Polite applause rippled through the ballroom. Everyone understood the code. Arrangements, assets, unencumbered. He was talking about Marissa. He was talking about their contract, about their sham of a marriage. In front of 200 people, he was openly boasting about it. It was bolder than the boutique incident. This was no careless aside. This was a calculated declaration. He was telling the elite of his world that she was a hired vessel, that the delivery of his heir had been flawlessly orchestrated. Marissa's blood turned to ice. She glanced to the back of the room, where Evelyn Tran stood, posing as a distant family friend. Evelyn met her eyes and gave a single, nearly imperceptible nod. "This is it," the nod said. "This is the kill shot." The applause faded, but the heat in her cheeks remained, a burning flush of humiliation masked by polite smiles. Marissa sat there, porcelain still, her fingers digging faint crescents into the velvet armrest of her seat. Her breath came shallow. All she could hear was Alexander's voice echoing in her head. Assets, arrangements, unencumbered. The language of business, of acquisition, not of parenthood, not of love. And the room applauded it. They all applauded her erasure. The rest of the shower blurred. Marissa opened extravagant gifts with forced delight. A sterling silver rattle from Tiffany, a Hermes baby blanket, a miniature Bentley convertible, real leather interior. Each item felt like another lock on her son's cage. These weren't gifts for a child. They were props for a dynastic performance. Tools to mold him into another Alexander, another Vaughn. As the party dwindled, Genevieve swept over to Marissa's throne. "You look a bit pale, dear," she said, her voice as cool as her diamond earrings. "Do try to keep your strength up. The final weeks are the most critical phase of the project." The project. Marissa looked up at the woman who had orchestrated her imprisonment. Her composure slipped, just for a second. Her hands tightened around the clutch in her lap, the dainty clasp biting into her palm. There was a roar inside her, a mother's scream stuffed behind a pageant queen's smile. She blinked hard to steady herself, to keep the fury from spilling out in front of the circling socialites. The actress broke character. "He's not a project, Genevieve," she said, voice low, steady. "He's my son." Genevieve's lips tightened. "Don't be sentimental. It's unbecoming. You have a role. I suggest you remember it." That night, back in the cavernous silence of the penthouse, Alexander was jubilant. "Kessler says the board is ecstatic," Alexander said as he loosened his tie. The speech about the heir was a masterstroke. Locked in the family man image. Stock's probably going to tick up Monday. Marissa stared at him. "You know I was there, right?" she said quietly. "The mother of the child you were talking about?" He waved a hand, irritated. "Don't start, Marissa. It was a business speech, for a business audience. You wouldn't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," she replied, and something in her voice, cold, flat fury, made him finally look at her. "You stood on a stage and called your wife and child an investment. An arrangement." "It's what they are," he snapped, patience fraying. "It's the truth. This is what you agreed to. Did you think I married you for your sparkling wit? I married you for your hips and your genetics. You're carrying my son, and for that you'll be very well compensated. That was the deal, so spare me the sentimental melodrama. It's getting old." And just like that, it was all out in the open. No masks, no games. The raw, monstrous truth of their marriage, laid bare. And resting on the nightstand, just a few feet away, Marissa's phone had captured every word. It sat there innocently, nestled beside a glass of water and her prenatal vitamins, its dark screen now a vault of truth. His voice was in it, his sneers, his justifications, his degradation, all of it. Her hands itched to grab the device, to press play, to confirm that she hadn't imagined it, but she didn't need to. She had lived every word. She didn't speak again. She simply turned, walked into the bathroom and locked the door behind her. She leaned against the cool marble wall, her body shaking, but her mind was steel. Each breath she drew scraped against her ribs like shards of ice. Her reflection stared back at her. Haunted, yes, but unbroken. This wasn't the breakdown he had expected. It was the ignition of something irreversible. She picked up her phone and sent a secure message to Evelyn Tran. He just confessed to everything, the whole philosophy. It's all on tape. Is it time? The reply came almost immediately. It's time. I'll have the papers ready by morning. We file for emergency ex parte custody at 9 a.m. Be ready. The war goes loud tomorrow. Marissa looked in the mirror. She looked pale, hollow, but her eyes burned. The surrogate was done playing the part. Tomorrow, the mother would rise. The next morning, Alexander Vaughn stepped into the main boardroom of Vaughn Holdings for his quarterly review. Utterly invincible. The city stretched below from the 80th floor, his domain. The boardroom was already filled with stone-faced executives and directors, powerful men and women who respected nothing but dominance. His speech from the baby shower had worked its magic. The atmosphere in the boardroom was reverent, controlled. Alexander Vaughn was at the peak of his power, untouchable. He had just begun his opening remarks on market expansion and dominance when the double doors opened. It wasn't his assistant. It was a stern-looking man in an ill-fitting suit, holding a thick manila envelope. "Alexander Vaughn?" the man asked, voice devoid of inflection. Alexander frowned, irritated at the intrusion. "Yes, what is it?" "I'm in a meeting." "You've been served." The man placed the envelope squarely on the polished walnut table. A ripple of confusion moved through the boardroom. Alexander stared at the envelope like it had fangs. Slowly he picked it up. His name was on the front, beneath the seal of the Los Angeles County Superior Court. With stiff fingers he opened it. The first page, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. Petitioner, Marissa Langley Vaughn. The second, Emergency ex parte motion for sole legal and physical custody of the unborn child, John Alexander Vaughn, Jr. The third, temporary restraining order barring him from coming within 500 feet of Marissa. The color drained from his face. He gripped the edge of the table with one hand, his knuckles whitening as he flipped through the documents. Every line of legal text struck him like a body blow, draining air from his lungs. He flipped through the pages, his brain struggling to keep up. Emotional cruelty, coercion, psychological abuse. Attached were transcripts, his own words, his conversation with his mother, his boastful speech from the baby shower, and worst of all, the venomous monologue from the night before, where he had called Marissa a paid vessel and admitted to marrying her for her hips and clean genetics. Then came the affidavit, a sworn statement from a sales associate at Bebe Elegant named Chloe, detailing the moment he told a store full of people that his wife was just the surrogate. The room was dead silent. Every board member stared at him, expressions shifting from confusion to realization to quiet horror. They weren't just witnessing a scandal, they were witnessing the implosion of their leader's credibility, live. There was no containing it now, no controlling the narrative, his empire, his image, his myth, unraveling in real time. "This is a mistake," he muttered, his voice unsteady. This is slander, blackmail." The words felt thin, brittle, even to his own ears. He fumbled for his phone. His hands trembled with a rage so sharp it made him lightheaded. He dialed. "Kessler, get to the office. Now. My wife's lost her mind. She's filed for divorce. She's trying to take my son." Kessler's voice was flat. "I'm already aware, Alexander. I got the notice from Evelyn Tran an hour ago." The name hit him like a blow. Evelyn Tran. The lioness. He'd heard the stories, the settlements, the dismantled legacies. He had never, not in his wildest imagination, thought she would be coming for him. "You'll crush her," Alexander growled into the phone. "You will crush her." "You'll use that contract to bury her," Alexander growled into the phone. "I own her. I own that child. It's all in the contract." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Alexander," Kessler said slowly, "the contract is the problem. Tran is arguing that your own words, both public and private, are evidence the agreement was signed under coercion. She claims it reflects a state of mind that makes you unfit to parent. She's using your statements to prove you don't see the child as a person, you see him as a corporate asset." "And the surrogate comment?" His voice dropped. "That was a fatal mistake." Alexander ended the call. The world tilted. He looked up. The board was still staring, expressions no longer confused but cold, evaluating, strategic. They didn't see a titan anymore. They saw a liability, a scandal. He stormed out of the boardroom, not sparing a glance at the silent directors. He barreled into the elevator, already violating the terms of the restraining order without hesitation. He had to fix this. He had to reassert control. He burst into the penthouse, expecting chaos, or better yet, fear. Instead, he froze. Marissa was calmly directing two uniformed security professionals as they boxed up her belongings. She wasn't dressed in the designer silks he'd selected for her. She wore jeans, a simple black t-shirt. She looked grounded. Stronger than he'd seen her in months. She looked like the woman he had first met in that dusty art gallery, except now she had a spine of steel. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the marble and glass. "What have you done?" Marissa turned. Her face was unreadable. Calm. Calm. "I'm leaving you, Alexander." "You can't leave me," he shouted, stepping forward. One of the guards immediately intercepted him. "I believe the court order stipulates you stay 500 feet away from my client, Mr. Vaughn," the man said politely but firmly. Alexander's face twisted as he looked from the guard back to Marissa. "You think you can take my son?" he spat. "After everything I've given you? I will destroy you, Marissa. You'll have nothing. You'll never see that child again." "The contract is ironclad," Marissa finally spoke, her voice clear, steady. "No, Alexander. The contract is a confession." "It's a confession," Marissa said, her voice steady. "A confession of what you truly believe a wife and a mother are. And you were generous enough to confirm it, over and over again, to a sales associate, to your mother, to 200 of your closest peers, and to me." She took one measured step forward, staying just beyond the guard's reach. "You told the world I was just a surrogate, a vessel you acquired. You don't get to call yourself a father just because it's suddenly inconvenient. You don't get to claim a child you believed you bought. My son isn't an asset. He is a human being, and he deserves a mother, not a manager." For the first time in his life, Alexander Vaughn was speechless. And in that silence, he saw it all. The months of quiet compliance, the calm smiles, the easy agreeability. It hadn't been submission. It had been strategy. She had been studying him. Using his own ego as a weapon, the woman he had written off as decorative, a quiet beauty, had outplayed him at every turn. He had built his empire on absolute control, and in one precise, devastating stroke, he had lost control of the only things that truly mattered: his wife, his heir, his name, his legacy. It was turning to dust in his hands. "You'll regret this," he whispered, the threat sounding weak, even to his own ears. Marissa shook her head slowly. "No, Alexander," she said, placing one hand over her belly. "For the first time in 2 years, I have nothing to regret." She turned her back on him, a final, quiet rejection. Then resumed packing. Alexander stood frozen, an emperor dethroned in his own hollow kingdom, as the sounds of his life were folded into cardboard boxes. 6 months later, the view from Marissa's window wasn't the skyline of Los Angeles or the towering facade of Vaughn Holdings. It was a quiet, tree-lined street in Silver Lake. Her apartment was modest by Vaughn's standards. But to her, it was a palace. It smelled like oil paint and baby formula. And it was filled with the only sound that mattered now: the soft, gurgling laughter of her 2-month-old son, Leo. She had refused to name him Alexander Jr. He wasn't a replica. He was his own person. Leo Rossi. The divorce had been every bit as brutal and as fast as Evelyn Tran had promised. The media had a field day. Billionaire's surrogate scandal. The transcripts of Alexander's own words were leaked. Evelyn had a gift for timing, and public opinion turned against him with swift and merciless force. His board, fearing irreversible damage to the Vaughn brand, pushed for a fast and quiet settlement. The ironclad contract was shredded in court. The judge, a no-nonsense senior woman, had called the agreement a modern-day indentured servitude. She granted Marissa sole legal and physical custody of Leo. Alexander was awarded supervised visitation, twice a month, 2 hours each time, monitored by a court-appointed third party. He came once. He looked at the perfect blinking child in Marissa's arms with the cold, clinical detachment of someone inspecting a flawed prototype. He didn't touch him. He never returned. The $10 million trust mentioned in the contract, gone, nullified. Instead, the court-ordered settlement gave Marissa a fair, though not lavish, lump sum and substantial child support. It was more money than she'd ever dreamed of. But she lived simply. She bought the apartment in Silver Lake and turned the second bedroom into an art studio. The rest of the funds were placed in a trust for Leo, A trust he would control, not one that would control him. Marissa dipped her brush into a swirl of cerulean and brought it to the canvas. She wasn't painting a person, she was painting a feeling, that chaotic, brilliant, soul-splitting love she felt every time she looked at her son. It was the best work of her life. Leo stirred in his bassinet beside the easel. She set the brush down and picked him up, warm and perfect in her arms. He smelled like milk and sunshine. His eyes, wide and brown like hers, blinked up at her. "Hi, my sweet boy," she whispered, kissing his cheek. "Did you have a good nap?" In this quiet, sunlit room, surrounded by color and creation, holding her son, Marissa finally understood what it meant to be rich. It wasn't penthouses or private jets. It wasn't tailored suits or polished boardrooms. It was this: the freedom to create, the right to love without fear. The fierce, unshakable bond with the little boy who had saved her life just as much as she had saved his. She had once been Marissa Langley, the quiet gallery assistant. Then she became Mrs. Alexander Vaughn, the woman behind the glass. Now, she was just Marissa, a mother, an artist, free, and she wouldn't have traded that for all the empires in the world. Marissa's story is a testament to the truth. Real strength has nothing to do with wealth or status. It's about having the courage to fight for your own story and the people who need you most. She took on a titan with nothing but his own arrogance and a mother's determination, and won. Her victory wasn't just for herself. It was for Leo. She freed him from a life designed to shape him into someone else. She gave him the gift of simply being a child. Because no contract, no matter how ironclad, can stand against the human spirit. Sometimes losing the life you thought you wanted is the only way to find the one you truly need. So the story is over. Our wonderful friends, are you still here at this hour? If you are, then maybe something about Marissa's journey is resonating deep within your heart. Maybe you felt dismissed, erased, trapped in someone else's version of your life. Maybe you've been called too emotional or told to stay quiet, to keep playing your part. And yet, you stayed, you listened, you felt. So now, let's breathe together and look at what this story truly offers us. Because Marissa's transformation wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about beating someone at their own game. It was about reclaiming her voice and protecting the one thing that mattered more than anything else: her child's right to be seen and loved for who he really is. It's so easy in this world to feel like you are only valuable when you're performing, producing, pleasing. But Marissa reminds us that love doesn't come from contracts. Worth doesn't come from status. And freedom, real, soul-deep freedom, starts the moment you say, enough. Tell the story of the mountain you climbed. Your words could become a page in someone else's survival guide. Morgan Harper Nichols. Marissa climbed that mountain. She turned pain into purpose. She fought through fear, not because she was fearless, but because she had something worth fighting for. That's courage. And maybe today, just maybe, her story helps you find a little more of yours. If her journey moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that speak truth, strength, and second chances. You never know whose life your click might touch. And always remember, no matter how ironclad their plan seems, your heart, your truth, and your love, those are the strongest forces in the world.